Hi Dave, dear ACT friends. For those who don't know me, I'm Tobias Schröder. I'm a social psychologist based in Potsdam in Germany, and I have contributed a few things to ACT. So Lynn asked me to say a few words on this panel about internationality and interdisciplinarity. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to the conference for the second time in a row. This is the second ACT conference in a row that I'm missing. It's very sad. But I have a family reunion this weekend, which had been planned a long time before, and that I didn't want to miss. But technology like this video allows us to be able to communicate anyway, and Dave, I'm sure there's nobody who appreciates technology in this regard more than Dave does, because he was kind of a pioneer in using the internet in doing research, even across the globe, and in bringing together a community. In fact, Dave was a bit something like a remote, unofficial co-supervisor of my PhD thesis at the time. It was very kind and generous of him. I think I will never forget the moment when I, as a very timid graduate student, sent out this email to Dave and telling him about my plans for dedicating my PhD work to ACT and asking for some help. And I wondered if I'd ever get a reply. And I think it did not even take an hour. And there was this email back and saying how delighted he was that I was interested in this kind of work and that he would do anything he could to help me get this going. And he did. So here you can see a screenshot of the German Project Magellan website. I hope you noticed the futuristic design, and if you don't believe me, you should just have a look at Jesse's current website. The Project Magellan was the name at the time for the international data collection effort in the ACT community. And it's this website that I built to contribute a German dictionary and German impression formation equations. And Dave really helped me set up the whole project by helping me to integrate the surveyor tool and the possibility to process data on the server of Indiana University. As, as far as I know, that was the first ever data collection where ACT data was collected over the internet, which may sound a bit trivial today, but at the time it wasn't. In my master's thesis, just a couple years before that, I had still worked with good old-fashioned pencil and paper and the postal service. Now, it's really remarkable if you realize that nowadays we're actually working on not asking people at all anymore, but rather using algorithms to extract meaning data and perhaps also impression formation data from the social web. And all that just within a few years. And if I think about the fact that I'm still pretty much in the first half of my career, you sometimes wonder where this is going to end up. But I don't want to talk too much about this connection between social science and computer science, because you have Jesse there and he can do a much better job at this than I can. But instead, in my brief remarks here, highlight some of the connections with cognitive science and psychology. In a way, this is going back to the early years, because the major roots of affect control theory are actually maybe even more in psychology than in sociology. So on this slide, you can see my depiction, which I show to undergraduate students, of Heider's balance theory, which is one of the first formalized theories of attitude consistency. And Dave once told me, I hope I remember this correctly, that in one of the first manuscripts when he attempted to publish ACT, it was actually called attitude control theory. So the contemporary version of attitude balance is in psychology and cognitive science is parallel constraint satisfaction. And in my postdoc work with Paul Thagard at the University of Waterloo in Canada, where I also happened to meet Jesse, I developed sort of an ACT implementation in a connectionist constraint satisfaction network, which you can see here on this slide. And we used this model to simulate the results of a series of important but also a bit controversial experiments in social psychology, psychological social psychology, which is called priming. And the priming experimental paradigm shows that it is sufficient to activate or subconsciously sometimes even activate social concepts in people's minds to elicit slight changes in their behavior. Like in the example that you can see on this slide, when you activate the concept rude, the trait rude in a person's mind, then they happen to interrupt an experimenter with much higher likelihood than when you activate the concept polite, which is something you can model very well with this modern Heiderian ACT type model that we developed. Now, talking of interdisciplinarity, my own discipline, psychology, seems to be moving more towards biology and medicine these days and away from social science, which is also legitimate because people are not just social beings and cognitive information processing systems, but also biological systems. So a question that I was interested in is, can we take a theory such as ACT to unite those three different levels of explanation? And this turned out to be very challenging. So it took us many, many years to get this work into a format that was acceptable to peer reviewers. But this year, 2019, we managed to publish actually 2 studies that bring together ACT and neuroscience. The first is another modeling paper. We took the semantic pointer architecture, which is a framework developed by Chris Eliasmith at the University of Waterloo for modeling cognitive processes in biologically realistic neurons. And what you can see here on this slide is a simulation of the event a mother shouts at a child, so a typical ACT simulation. And our model predicts that if that happens, the mother is angry and the child fearful. Now, what's remarkable about that prediction is that it's computed by thousands of artificial neurons that have realistic biological properties. So you could say, in a way, it's an interact that works more like an artificial brain. But we've also done some empirical work on putting together ACT and neuroscience. And it's funnily the first preliminary results of this work were presented at the ACT conference 2012 in Indiana. And there you can see how long it sometimes takes in science to get something really done. So this work came only out this year in January. But what we did there is create different event descriptions that differ in their deflection. And then we were able then we recorded EEG data from the subjects who were supposed to read these event descriptions. And we were able to successfully connect the deflection in those event descriptions with several EEG properties that are related in the literature to semantic mismatch. So we have basically a biological correlate of deflection. So that was my brief tour de ACT and cognitive science. Now, we know very well that humans have a tendency to draw boundaries around their communities. That's very much true these days in global politics, but also in science. And we shouldn't forget that these boundaries are artificial, and the problems often do not respect the boundaries. That's as true in politics as it is in science. So I think what I like most about ACT is that it's a wonderful tool to transcend the borders between disciplines. And we absolutely need to do that if we want to understand something as incredibly challenging as human social interaction. So thank you, Dave, for creating such a wonderful tool for us. And we all promise to cherish it. I wish you a wonderful conference. Bye.